So this is an excerpt from Duplicity and Duress, Not Factories in the Making by Erin Vans, my pen name. This is a book I wrote back in 2016 and published in 2017. And I'll be reading from a chapter entitled Piper and Claire, Professional Couch Schleppers. So I'll read, I have a quote above it, and then I'll start reading the chapter. Like a circular swirl of chaotic dynamics cascading down and spinning around one person to create an eruption of emotions of which that innocent person cannot control. That's how some of the sadistic warfare goes down. Piper and Claire, Professional Couch Schleppers. Piper appeared on the scene as a new visitor to one of Philadelphia's most premier dog parks, Beluga Run. This was approximately 2 years prior to the fiasco of day one. Her presence was duly noted as I wrestled with a latch on the makeshift gate opening directly into the dog park. The gate was the second of a 2-gate entry system specifically designed to make sure all dogs coming in and out of the popular run don't wind up in the street and pulled under the tires of an 18-wheel delivery truck filled with produce for the supermarket across the way. The small area between this 2-gate entry system is sort of like dog purgatory, with canine heaven being the actual dog park, and hell, well, you know, being the street with the big rigs pumping their brakes full throttle. Piper was way over on the opposite side of heaven, near the second rising mound of fresh wood chips recently deposited to replenish the area. I saw her as an opportunity to escape a few busybodies in the park I'd grown to despise as a result of their usual gossiping, mediocre hustling, and all-around cattiness. This was during the last days of my employment at the nonprofit called Survivors in Transition, which assists women caught up in the turmoil of domestic violence. For 9 months or so, I'd been balancing dog walks along with my role as an advocate at that organization, but decided to take the leap, walk more dogs so that I could focus on writing. It's also true I needed to escape the organization due to oddities witnessed at Survivors in Transition. Piper was keeping a close eye on her Weimaraner, Darwin, who was trotting around the park, sniffing behind bushes and pawing at rocks for a place to stake his claim, all the while bobbing his head up and down to check out any newcomers stepping into the arena. And it's a nicely sized arena. It sits directly behind the grocery store I spoke of. It used to be a Superfresh supermarket, a unionized grocery store that happens to be on the corner opposite the non-union Whole Foods market at 10th and South Streets. Superfresh is now an Acme. Its changeover and demise was a bit tragic, having occurred sometime in 2015. Its shelves empty and barren, with the occasional no-frills peanut butter jar tucked away in a hard-to-reach corner, trails of toilet paper lining a few aisles, with single rolls of Scott's brand outer wrappers half-torn, lying lonely and stranded near the edge of paper products or Bath and Beauty. A cashier or two demoralized and beaten down, ringing through Tic Tacs, mayonnaise, and gum, their scanners barely picking up scratched barcodes, and the register lights flickering above them in the dimly lit lanes. That's how bad it was at the end of the Superfresh life. I'd stopped shopping at the store on a regular basis about a month into 2011 because of a furor of activity occurring in their frozen food section while I sorted through boxes of Sara Lee croissants. This is when the snow kept falling in rounds and rounds of storms, one after the other, pummeling the streets. The Superfresh was a 3-ring circus back then, with shoppers looping the aisles, making sure they grabbed up all the water they could as the city would actually shut down. People were swooping in from the left and the right to grab products off the shelves in front of other people too slow to beat them to the chase. Just one freezer door down from me, with a Sara Lee box in one hand, was a man who was with his wife. He dipped down to the bottom shelf where the pies were to pick out a cherry pie, and, as if speaking directly to me as I held my croissants tightly, said as loud and as cheerfully as he could, "Whoa ho, I think I want to get in on the pie business." He looked right into my eyes with disturbing overzealousness. At the time, I took this to be a snide remark about my lesbianism, considering the bizarre innuendo that occurred after day one. In hindsight, however, it could have been about the time I contacted the male author of a book who made a very decent living servicing gentlemen as a high-end escort in the gay community. I wondered if lesbians could actually make money doing the same for other high-end lesbians. As it turns out, there really doesn't seem to be as big a demand for escorts among and between women as there is with men in general, straight or gay. Maybe that's what he meant about getting into the pie business. Then I thought about Rebel, a girl I'd slept with who is described later in this book. There was a split second in time after we slept together that paranoia had me questioning if she filmed the event. In any case, I'm certain this comment was directed toward me, the alleged hoe, who expressed interest in the quote-unquote pie business. Pie meaning women. It was a classic example of orchestrated stalkers who relentlessly drop subtle hints about knowing a survivor's personal business without coming right out to say so directly. The survivor, in this case, me, is left speculating about the brief encounter, which didn't leave much room for direct confrontation. What would I have said to this complete stranger in frozen foods with his wife? Excuse me, are you talking to me about the wink-wink pie business? Another significant element of this type of harassment is the underhanded insinuation of the survivor being narcissistic. It's not always about you, is a favorite comment by those in the know in regards to organized stalking. Survivors aren't narcissistic people, never were and never really could be, but this kind of onslaught of nuanced behavior is designed to turn someone who was leading a basically normal life into someone who appears paranoid and narcissistic. Fact is, if you become a target, a very large networked ring of people are circling and swarming you. They are saying and doing things to make you wonder, why all the attention? And how did they know that? The truth is, within this enclosed networked circle, which in a city seems like 90% of the immediate population, everything is about the survivor. Those involved in the harassment spend a significant amount of time altering their schedules, scripting their conversations, upping their hacking attempts, breaking into and altering survivors' emails, following survivors' shopping routines, turning off survivors' electrical devices, figuring out a survivor's passwords, stalking survivors' bus schedules and routines, getting intel on the survivor's dining out schedule, and being among the first to figure out that new place a survivor runs to for sanctuary, only to start up their activity yet again. No narcissism required. Please, I've had people ride the bus from New York City to Philadelphia at 11 p.m. at night who found a way to cut in line in front of me only to carry out a skit with a luggage loader that emulated to a T a personal and private drama going on in my own life, twisting the knife deeper into my gut so that I'd relive the painful experience over again. If there is a core person behind the madness, the mastermind, if you will, behind the dispatching and organizing of such clowns out to a survivor's location on a daily basis, he is the one who is the narcissist. Piper was kicking chips and pebbles around the park's 2-foot-high embankment wall, designed with sophisticated precision to uphold a large section of dirt and grass, which skirted the park's northern edge. The embankment is a popular hotspot for many of the park's four-legged friends eager to get a lay of the land, a better view of the scene below. They roam around the perimeter of the park, sniffing out fresh patches of good hardy soil, while occasionally glancing as inconspicuously as they can into the center ring to take note of whatever prime, juicy, fresh meat walked in. In other words, small dogs appearing on the scene unaware of what lurked on the terrace above. Like hyenas on a hill, the embankment riders pace and prance, each with its own tennis ball clenched in the side of its mouth. They wait for that one Havanese falling behind the pack, or that long-haired Maltese tripping over his own paws, stumbling and bumbling along. From time to time, these wall walkers, as I like to call them, are called off duty and, for a minute, must lose composure to become unwilling exhibitionists, squatting into position, their thighs trembling, while they deposit hefty loads of boughs, freshly steaming on the soil from which they tiptoe away, innocently looking around to see if anyone noticed. Wasn't me, they seem to say. I didn't do anything. Their owners trailing behind, opening up little plastic dog do bags, bearing messages like, "This end up," or who's the boss, or ready for Hillary. So I'll end that there. This was an excerpt from the second chapter of my book, Duplicity and Duress, Factories in the Making, and the chapter is entitled Piper and Claire, Professional Couch Schleppers. Thank you.